We seek the unknown, the unseen, out of curiosity and to face our fears. Some find death difficult to face, while others actively embrace it. Fear can be both something to avoid as well as something that gives us an adrenaline rush. The afterlife is one of the places that many hope for and expect upon leaving the land of the living. We at the same time fear death because of its unknown nature. The norm of society is to acknowledge death, but to treat it as a mere afterthought. Halloween is the one time of year where the macabre becomes acceptable and condoned, and perhaps a time to face our fears.
For someone who makes their living writing about ghosts and the unexplained and haunted history in general, Alton, Illinois has been one of those towns that has always sort of brought me back. It doesn't matter where else I've lived, I always end up still doing something in Alton. I started doing ghost tours there about 20 years ago, and I've never gotten tired of it. I've never run out of stories, and we've never run out of people who want to hear those stories because Alton has such a great history when it comes to my line of work, I guess. Legend has it Mark Twain called Alton a dismal little river town because of all of the things that had happened there during or before his era. But now, I mean, those are the reasons why it's become known as one of the most haunted small towns in America. Alton has this long history of everything from crime to epidemics to floods to fires to the Civil War. You name it, it's happened there. And that buildup of all of that history has left its mark on the place. Plus, you've got a town built on limestone with water underneath. So there are two good reasons why Alton is so haunted. One is the history. The other is a natural reason with that limestone and that water storing things up like a giant battery. And so the past just repeats itself over and over again in Alton.
Those who study the paranormal believe that there are portals to other dimensions, portals to the afterlife where restless spirits can enter and interact with the living. It is believed that some people can sense these locations, while others may never notice them. Paranormal investigators often focus on areas where tragedy has occurred. Suicides, murders, pain and suffering, unjust killings, and sudden violent demise can all be associated with these types of places. It is also believed that natural elements such as running water and limestone rock are conduits of energy that spirits can channel into a manifestation or some other form of physical contact with the living. These are some of the reasons Alton is considered to be a prime location for ghostly activity. Alton lies near the convergence of three rivers, the Mississippi, the Illinois, and the Missouri. Large limestone bluffs lie along its northern borders, and many buildings in Alton contain limestone bricks. Alton has suffered tragedy due to seasonal flooding multiple times since its founding. The Confederate Penitentiary was a location of great suffering from inhumane living conditions to a smallpox epidemic that left over 1,700 soldiers dead. More modern times has seen the appearance of strange creatures and ghostly apparitions that have given rise to the most haunted town in Illinois moniker that Alton now possesses and promotes. Perhaps it is just the suggestion of being a haunted location that gives visitors a feeling of dread as they travel along the lower regions of Alton. The river town is located along a scenic stretch that is a popular destination for travelers who enjoy the natural beauty of the landscape and the quaint small towns and shops along the Illinois and Missouri borders. It is also a popular destination for paranormal investigators and for many who make an annual pilgrimage in autumn for a chance to witness one of the reported hauntings that occur throughout the town.
For a lot of people, Alton seems to have sort of a presence to it, and maybe that's what Mark Twain was talking about when he called it a dismal little river town. For people who come there, sometimes they feel that it's an odd place, and I think that dates back to really the beginning of recorded history in Alton. When Marquette and Joliet came down the Mississippi River back in 1673, one of the first things they discovered about what would someday be Alton was that it was home to a monster, or at least that's what the Native Americans told them. Painted on the side of the bluff was this fierce creature known as the Piazaw bird, which meant the bird that devours men. And this bird was supposed to have been attacking and preying and eating on the villagers who lived in the area back several centuries even before Marquette and Joliet. And the natives had kept this tradition alive by telling and retelling this story and painting its image on the rocks where they would pay tribute to its ferocity. The story goes that he was killed off by a Native American chief who had a vision of how to kill the Piazaw bird. They destroyed it and then painted this image in its honor. And this was something that startled these explorers as they came down the Mississippi, because they had already seen a lot of things that no one else had ever seen before. And maybe that's part of the reason why Alton seems to have this, feeling about it to a lot of people. Maybe it dates all the way back several hundred years, but regardless, the history that has happened in the last 200 has more than left a mark that people will notice when they come to town.
In the high bluffs of Anoka, where three great rivers collide, lived an ancient beast with awful wicked eyes, with horns like that of a white-tailed deer and a face kinda like a man. It hunted a line of wicked Indians, spilled their blood across this land. Fly on, Piazaw. Fly on, Piazaw. Fly on, Piazaw. Fly on, Piazaw. With wings, 4 legs, and talons, its body was covered in scales. Its beard was long and tangled, a sight straight from the pits of hell. It carried all of its victims to feast upon in its cave. Some folks say it's filled with bones that were left there to decay.
Now, in the early days of the penitentiary, because there was no cemetery and you had men dying on a regular basis, they needed some place to take the dead. Well, a farmer in North Alton offered the use of a goat pasture that he had to be used as a cemetery. So bodies from the penitentiary would be floated on a raft down to a ferry landing at the bottom of what was known as Hopala Road. Now, Hopala Road ran through the woods up to the north side of town. So this is where the bodies would be taken. And this went on for years, not only during the years of the penitentiary, but after it was a Civil War prison. This is where the bodies would be taken. They would load them on a wagon, they'd take them up through the woods to Hopala Road, and then they would bury them in that goat pasture. And eventually it became a regular cemetery, but it didn't get marked for quite a number of years. Now, a lot of stories and ghost stories began to surround Hopala Road. Now, the legend was that some of the soldiers and earlier the prison guards who didn't want to make the trip all the way to the goat pasture and go to the trouble of burying the dead would actually drag the bodies out into the woods and just dump them out there, throw some leaves and sticks over them, and then they would sit around and drink and play cards until it seemed like it'd been long enough that they could have buried a body and would go back to the prison. Now, this was just a story because there had been a legend that had come up about Hopala Road, and the legend was that if you traveled along the road at night, that sometimes you might encounter the ghosts of these soldiers whose bodies had been dumped in the woods, trying to flag down passing cars to get a ride to the goat pasture where they were supposed to have been buried. Now, as every town has its own, vanishing hitchhiker stories, nobody put much stock into this. Well, after I had moved to Alton, shortly after, there had been a news story about bodies that had been found in the woods near Hop Hollow Road. The police had been called in to investigate. Somebody thought maybe there had been a murder and a body had been dumped. Well, it turned out that they found 2 sets of skeletal remains that dated back to the 1850s. They thought at least that far. So suddenly this part of the story about the soldiers dumping bodies, nobody knew if it was for sure or if it was true, but now it seemed to have a bit of truth to it. So if that part did, what about the rest? Well, I still found that hard to believe. Until one night, I was on a tour. It was the fall of 1999. I remember this exactly. And we were traveling along in a trolley that a friend of mine owned. He had a trolley company, and we were doing tours on the trolley at the time. And we were traveling up the road, and we were traveling along Hop Hollow Road to tell these stories. We just turned onto the road. I hadn't even got to the ghost stories yet. I hadn't even got to let's dump bodies in the woods yet. And as we're traveling along, suddenly these 2 girls in the back of the trolley started screaming. Well, it startled everybody on board, so my friend pulled over the trolley so we could try to calm everybody down, asked these girls what was wrong. They said that as soon as we had turned on the road and started up through the woods, that they had been looking out the window and had seen a man come walking out of the trees and start waving his arm at the trolley and then disappeared. Now, I had not told the ghost story yet, but I thought, well, maybe they're locals. No, they had come from Kansas City just to take the tour. They didn't know anything about the history or anything about Hop Hollow Road. So I always tell people, if you maybe want to see a ghost, drive up Hop Hollow Road some night. But if you see somebody looking to flag a ride, you may not want to pick them up just in case.